Turn that booty up.
You need your own little dinosaur beanie.
Needs a whole snowsuit.
Yeah.
With a poop chute in the back.
Yeah.
Take the snaps down and drop a deuce.
He couldn't wear a beanie. His head's too flat.
Yeah. You got no head to put it on.
Yeah.
A flat dome. Paul, have you ever heard of Neutral Milk Hotel? They're that meme band. They're not a meme band, bro. Just because a bunch of like incels latched on to the Aeroplane Over the Sea album doesn't make Neutral Milk Hotel a meme band.
They're not even like that subversive or pretty mainstream.
Yeah. This is what I hate, dude. One of the things that I hate is that like this like meme culture thinks it's way more important than it is. No. I remember during the Occupy Wall Street movement, the lead singer of Neutral Milk Hotel went down to Zuccotti Park and played like a whole acoustic set for the people there, and they were singing along with it. It was one of the like most memorable, coolest parts of that protest. It's what like got me into it as a movement, because it felt like
A hippie movement.
yeah, it just reminded me of the hippie movement. Just a bunch of people just singing and loving life. Yeah, Jeff Mangum. It was awesome to hear him sing it in acoustic as well, and like crazy that his voice sounded the same as it did in the 90s and early 2000s. I was just sitting on the toilet and reading some comments on a video, and it set me off, got me like triggered. And pretty much like every other time I end up going into the comments of a video, especially one that I'm like enjoying, I get triggered. There are just so many experts in the world that just know exactly what you should be doing with your time, money, and channel. So many experts. I was watching this video by this channel called Squidmar Miniatures. It's a Warhammer painting channel, and trying to think of how to explain it. You know, like, have you ever seen somebody do those like trade up kind of challenges where they start with some tiny little thing not worth much and they try and trade to something, they trade it for something that's slightly more. So he did that. He started with like a really cheap, shitty miniature that was worth 10 cents, a night goblin. And he traded and traded and traded and traded over the course of a year, and ended up with not one but two of the most expensive models in Warhammer, two giant warlord titans that are like, I don't know, they're probably even bigger than that. They're probably like 3 feet tall, 2 feet tall or something like that. He ends up with two of those, and they've decided that they're going to paint them up and make something out of both of them, and then have a charity auction. And they've decided, instead of just painting them up, they're going to make a big, awesome diorama out of them to make it look like they're fighting. They're going to pour resin, make it look like they're fighting in a shallow ocean. So there's water splashing, and one of them's falling over, and the other one's like knocking it over. It looks cool. Like their concept for it, at least, it looks cool. And I was just like, wow, that's That's neat. I bet people are jazzed about this. And I went in the comments and literally, I just feel for these dudes because I know how it is, dude. You do something like totally extra that you didn't have to do just to like make something cool for the people that watch you. And everybody in the chat was like, if you put them all in resin, then they're not game usable. I wouldn't even want to win that. Well, it's going to weigh 100 pounds. And may I suggest that you make a way for them to be removable from the diorama so they could be game usable? Keep in mind, and this is like what makes it kind of ridiculous. Warlord Titans, like the giant Titans in Warhammer, they're not really game usable. You don't use them in the game. There's one type of Warhammer that you use them in and nobody plays it. It's called Apocalypse. And it's like literally like a giant army. You know what I mean? It's just absurd. It takes hours and hours just to set the table up to even start playing. And then even more and more hours and hours to actually play through the game, because it's just like thousands and thousands of units. And, you know, the linchpin is the Titan. Nobody plays it. Yet everybody in the chat, these guys have like done all of this at their own expense. You know what I mean? They didn't ask anybody. It's not like they like e-begged their audience like, yo, can you like donate us $4,000 so we can buy and paint up and auction a Warlord Titan? They did it all on their own. And instead of people going like, wow, that's really cool, every fucking comment is some expert that knows how they should do it better. And it's just like, you know what, dude? If you have a better idea, do it. Mm-hmm. You trade up from a Night Goblin to a Titan, and then you paint it up and you sell it or whatever. Like, I just hate the nature of the internet.
Everyone knows that you get more attention being a contrarian, so doesn't matter what the take is, there's got to be the anti-take.
Oh yeah, every one of the comments is like upvoted to the stratosphere and has 100 sub comments saying, like, basically just repeating the same thing. Mm-hmm. It's just like, oh my fucking god, just go away. Mm-hmm. Comment sections are always cancer. I know. It's one of the really big downsides to the internet is that, you know, people have a place where they can go to voice their fucking displeasure with free content. Mm-hmm. It's like, get out. Get out of here.
But YouTube makes it to where if you don't have comments, then your algorithm tanks.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately they just helped.
Yeah.
But it's just the hive of like smug bitching, because it's all like most of the comments that I read before I just gave up were like, they're not like nasty. They're not like, this is retarded, you shouldn't do that. They're like this weird like, I know better than you kind of like smug shit, which is even worse. It's just like, shut up. These dudes are just having fun. This is their hobby. You know what I mean? It's their hobby is painting these miniatures, and every once in a while making a big diorama and blah blah blah.
It's like if they wanted to play with those Titans, they would just buy the Titans. And
yeah. Well, almost free. I think internet connection should be public utility. Yeah, I think so too, but because you have to pay for your internet connection doesn't mean that you get input on everything that's made on the internet. Mm-hmm. I'm not mad, just disappointed. Yeah, dude. Yeah, exactly, Zonster. 100%. That's exactly the tone I'm talking about, bro. It's just like, shut up, man. You're not my dad. Mm-hmm. Like, what do you mean you're disappointed? And all because they want the miniature to be game playable, but they're not. You know what I mean? In the base game of 40K, you can't even field a Titan. It's too many points. Like, you get a certain amount, like, each unit that you field in Warcraft is worth a certain amount of points. And typically, you're playing, like, 500 points versus 500 points, or 1,000 points versus 1,000 points. Like, a big game is 2,000 points versus 2,000 points, or 3,000 points. Like, a Warlord Titan, I think, by itself as a model is 5,000 points or something. So you can't. And they suck. Like, that's the greatest thing, too, is, like, even if you were saying that you could work it into, like, a 5,000 point game, it would just die. They're, like, really susceptible to anti-tank kind of stuff, which everybody brings. So it would just be like a flash in the pan, 2 turns and it's dead kind of thing.
I mean, that's probably why they're using that apocalypse thing as like part of a greater strategy or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, they work in that specific instance because they're one of, you know, thousands of models on the table, and so I don't know. It's just like fucking these people just so fucking entitled.
Mm-hmm. Those people too are like, I've been watching for years, so you should really value my opinion.
Oh yeah, there's a bunch of that. Big fan of you guys, but I gotta say, ruining. There were people acting like these Titans were, like these models were somehow like something that had to be respected. That was the weirdest one. It was like, you're just taking 2 of the greatest models in Warhammer and ruining them. It's like, what? Who the fuck are you?
You could probably 3D print them pretty damn easily.
Oh yeah, I'm sure you can.
They're not made of like gold or like rubber from the mines of whatever.
Like, or you could save up $2,000 and buy one for yourself and do whatever, whatever you want.
Yeah.
And those dudes are not going to be looking over your shoulder telling you how to do it either. Games Workshop has an insane markup. Yeah, I know. It's kind of like sad. I was watching this like history of Warhammer video recently, and they were talking about like people when they got into the hobby in the 90s, how like models where you could get like a whole pack of models for a couple bucks. And now, like, if you're getting a pack of multiple models, if you get out the door for less than like 40 or 50 bucks, you're getting a good deal. It's just like, damn it all. I'm late to the party again. I will say that models look a lot better now than they did when they started. They're a lot more detailed and cool looking.
They were probably just like casts in the beginning or whatever, where they had like the little creases on them and shit.
Yeah. Like, now they're designed in a program. Like, before they were actually, like, the original was sculpted by hand by a dude, you know, and there's only so much you can do. And... Some of the older ones look kind of cool, but... I guess it's just my bad for reading the comments.
There should be a setting to where, like, you just turn off your ability to view the comments. Like, you can close the live chat.
I'm sure there is. I'm sure there's some kind of, like, little browser extension that gets rid of them or whatever. Yeah. But I think YouTube should just get rid of them. YouTube should just cancel comments. You're such a good boy, D.
Mm-hmm. Not even phased.
Are you surprised YouTube is still on top? No. I mean, it was really like the first, they were first there. Like, you know, there were other websites where you could upload videos, but YouTube was the first one to like codify it into a community thing and really get big.
And plus, being owned by Google, they were able to be like a loss leader for a long time. Like, it hasn't been profitable in forever.
They're just owned by a giant corporation that's happy to write off the expense and
Yeah.
blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I mean, in a perfect world, there would be just a, you know, an open forum kind of place that isn't corporate owned for people to post shit, but
It's just too expensive.
yeah. Remember when turning off comments was a big deal? Yeah. If YouTube would just uncouple comments from the algorithm, they would basically end comments, because I'd be willing to bet you that most content creators, especially ones on the larger end that are like making their living doing it, comments would be off. They've already like pretty much just done away, and I know a lot of people are like, yeah, they didn't do away with ratings, you can get an extension, and it's just like, dude, 99% of humanity isn't going to go download an extension just so they can see upvotes and downvotes on YouTube. To be honest with you, probably like 90% of the people that use the internet don't even know what an extension is or how to use it.
I know, like, browsing especially has just been moved to mobile so much.
Yep. Is the Warhammer community toxic? I don't know. I don't like that term. I don't like that new umbrella term for everything you don't like, but I'm sure there are some people in there that are it's saying how many bots flood comment sections on some of these channels, and YouTube won't do anything about it. I mean, why would they? Who cares? No, I mean, the best era of YouTube was before it was purchased by Google. So 2007, 2008, 2009, that range. That's the goods.
That was also probably when they were losing the most money.
I would imagine so, yeah. It's mind-blowing that another video platform isn't succeeding. Not really. Like I said, like, YouTube has become a verb. Like, that's how you can tell when something is not going away, is when it, like, starts to be, like, Google. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Now you Google something. What are you doing? Oh, I'm YouTubing. It's the same shit. Thanks, LV Shades, for the 99 cents and the little doggy thing. I like that doggy.
Like, people underestimate how lazy people are, too. It's like the slightest inconvenience reduces the reach by like 50%.
Oh, yeah.
To download a different app or make a new account for something or whatever it is.
It's funny, like, one of the mistakes I think we made with Deep Fat Fried in the early days, and we were just like behind the curve on the algorithm, was putting a big, 1.5, 2 minute long intro in front of every video. Because there's a huge portion of people that are just like, I'm not sitting through some long ass fucking intro, fuck that, I'm gonna go somewhere else. Like, now it's like shit's gotta just start. You click on it, immediately the video's going, immediately it's starting. You know what I mean? There's no bullshit. If you're going to do an intro, it's very like, it's after you start the video, and it's very short. Like, just, all right, we're back into it. Even TV shows ditched long intros. Yeah, I know. It's funny, like, the Breaking Bad intro is like that. It's just like, and it's over. Yeah, like, okay, yeah. What happened to like a whole song? Back in the day, you had no choice but to watch the intro on TV. Yeah, but they wouldn't have done it if people didn't like it. I think back in the day, it was like, I don't know, it was like a good way for people to like, it brought like warm, fuzzy feelings when it came on.
I think it's really only annoying if you're binge watching. Like, if you were watching it like a week apart, you weren't gonna get sick of the intro song. But like now with the Netflix thing, if you're watching 3 episodes in a row, you're like, "Fuck that intro!"
Yeah.
Or just heard it.
It was also like a big announcement to everybody else in the house that I remember when I was a kid. Like, you know, you'd be across the house and, you know, mom and dad would be watching something, your sister would be watching something, you'd hear the intro and you'd go, "Oh, Cheers is on. Let's go watch Cheers." Have you seen the Mud Wizard taunting those cops? No, I've not seen that. Have you seen? Have you seen? Have you seen? Do you read Sutter Kane? So bored with the internet. Any suggestion to get out of the funk and stop wasting time on it? I mean, no. Yeah, I'm in the same boat, Zonster. I didn't get cable until I was in my teens, so it was broadcast TV, 4 or 5 channels max. You know, one or two of them was Spanish, so you know those are out. But it definitely like there's no such thing as binge watching. I'm sure there was a lot of people that watched a lot of TV back in the day, but it was way easier to just be done. You know, like, okay, well, nothing's on. I want to watch. Let's go find something else to do. Now that just doesn't exist anymore. Everything is on 24/7, 365. On demand. It's kind of cool, but it's definitely changed the way people consume things. There were so many bad shows back in the day. MacGyver was a good show. Just a dude that can build anything out of anything. It was fun.
Yeah. And it still has an impact today. A lot of people haven't seen MacGyver. People know immediately what MacGyver means.
Yep. Quantum Leap. Quantum Leap is like modernly, it's defined by that one episode. It's it's like a totally interesting, like futuristic concept of a dude that just he's has like some kind of quantum device that allows him to leap into different bodies at different times and places. And the whole point is he's supposed to try and like make the best outcome for whatever person he is this time around, and then he gets to leap again, and he's trying to like leap back into his own body. That's the whole point. But that one episode where he leaps into a kid with Down syndrome and he looks at himself in the mirror and says, "I'm retarded." It's like, oh, pretty good. I still know the tune of those old shows, the A-Team, Magnum PI, $6 Million Man. Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, like, they were catchy.
They probably invested millions in those.
I imagine so, yeah. Do you know the Olive Garden will limit you to 86 breadsticks? No, I didn't know that. 86 is the cutoff, huh? Where they go like, no more breadsticks for you. You've eaten an entire restaurant worth of breadsticks.
How do you even eat that many breadsticks,
I don't think
man?
you can. I don't think anybody can. That's way too much bread. Thanks for the $5 and the Brett Keane question. Why are people in your community still obsessed with Brett Keane? Coming from someone who never watched. I don't know. I don't know. You got me. Nostalgia. Yeah, probably.
Yeah, you had a lot of people coming of age in that audience.
Yeah, unfortunately so. We were there a team.
Yeah.
We were there MacGyver. To me, it's not even really about letting go of the past. It's just like, what more could you possibly say about an uninteresting dullard? You know what I mean? Like, we picked every little bit of meat, cartilage, and sinew off of that bone. It is just a dry, desiccated bone now. It's like, you want to gnaw on it, you go right ahead. There are plenty of channels out there still trying to be that. Go for it. It's sad to me when I see like channels that are really trying to create that environment again, and they're just picking on some different idiot on the internet. It's kind of a connection to the past, nostalgia. He's why Paul and others often refer to me as Zonster. Oh yeah, that is true. I guess that is true. His legacy lives. He was our Chris Chan. No. See, that's the thing, is like, Chris Chan, that whole thing got so far out of hand. Like, we just took Brett Keene's videos and made fun of him for it. Like, he would put shit out there that was demonstrably stupid, and we would goof on it. And that was the interaction. People got involved in Chris Chan's life. They were, calling him up on the phone and pretending to be people they weren't, and gaslighting him constantly. And it's shocking how far people went with that kid. BK's actually a few years younger than me. Yeah, he's like my age. Maybe a couple of years older than me, I think. He shouldn't have been on the internet. I mean, yeah, there should have been somebody in Chris Chan's life that, like, pulled the plug on that shit, but his parents were just too boomer to understand what was going on, really. But yeah, there should have definitely been somebody to stop that. I hate the Chris Chan experts or whatever they call themselves. He's mentally ill. It's just cruel. Yeah, I agree. Never understood that obsession people get with creators to devote your whole life to someone you've never even met. I mean, whatever. It's the same as, like, we were with TV stars and music stars, or it's just a new type of celebrity. Micro celebrity, basically. Mm-hmm. Where you have so much more choice now. You find somebody that embodies your particular state of mind, and you can just ride it till the wheels fall off.
And the accessibility, too.
Yeah.
You had to have a certain level of obsession to really get under the skin of someone like I don't know, fucking George Clooney or something.
I mean, you just didn't even really have
Yeah.
a venue for it.
Yeah.
Like, you could sit and talk shit with your friends.
Yeah.
Maybe have like a forum or something, or in the earlier days of the internet where you talk shit. But the chances of George Clooney ever laying eyes on anything that you had to say about him was slim to none.
Yeah, now with all these like celebrities getting quote unquote canceled for their tweets, it's like any smart celebrity isn't going to run their own Twitter anymore.
Yeah. Can't run up in George Clooney's chat. I know. Can't be spamming George Clooney's chat. He doesn't have one. I guess now technically he does, because you can tag him on social media and start a whole fucking thread. So you could be all up in George Clooney's chat now. Acting a fool. Acting a fool. I gotta love that, dude. Every day I come out here to have a little piece of zen, listen to the birds, and somebody's fucking got their lawn being. It's just so obnoxious. Ugh. So obnoxious. Yeah, getting your yard taken care of in January. Real smart. Real necessary. Leaf blowing, weed whacking, dude. When I was not to boomer you up some more, but when I was a kid, there were manual tools for every one of those things. It's called a broom for the leaves, or a rake. A little edger thing that you pushed along the edge of the lawn to do the edging and stuff. Like, I did all that shit. You didn't have like a loud ass 2-stroke tool for everything. How's the water shortage here? I was reading the news, and snowpack in the Sierra Nevadas is at 250% of normal. So not 250% of drought numbers, 250% of what would be considered to be a norm. So it's like, it's crazy. Super duper crazy. There's going to be an insane amount of water in the summer when that snowpack starts to melt. They're going to be like dry riverbeds in California that haven't run for 10, 15 years. They're going to be full. 250% higher. So 250% above what a normal snowpack would be. And we're something like 180% of rainfall as well. So it's like we've basically gotten 2.5 years worth of rainfall and snowpack. Yeah, it's gonna take some time. We definitely need like 3 or 4 or 5 years of this type of shit in a row to really replenish all of the reservoirs and the groundwater, but it's definitely like a stopgap. This next year is going to be a pretty abundant year when it comes to water. Like, there's already there's a reservoir actually kind of near me, not super near me, but not too far from me, a big dam, and and they're already talking about how they're selling the water cheap to the municipalities this year because they're basically going to be opening the spillway soon. So, yippee skippy. But yeah, the chances of this being an actual change in weather patterns and not just a fluke is pretty low. So there's a pretty good chance that after next summer we'll come and go, and then have another dry winter, and we're right back in it. Could have built the infrastructure to unsalt water from the ocean to use. That's incredibly like power intensive. There are water desalinators in California. I think there's like 3 or 4 really big water desalination plants or whatever, but it's just so energy intense to do it. It's not a long-term solution. I'm not sure why we still have so many farmers who insist on farming in super dry areas. I mean, because there's a lot of money wrapped up in their operations, honestly. It's not like the old days where, the stuff you see at the store is like a conglomerate of a bunch of little smaller operations. Now you've got these huge 1,000-acre factory farms for corn and wheat and almonds, and everything is, everybody's got multiple tens of millions of dollars wrapped up in the operation. And so it's not super easy to just sell your land off and go somewhere that's less arid. Tractors the size of elephants. I mean, bigger than elephants, dude. These big combines and shit are insane. It's just, the robber barons have been back for some time. It's just hardly anybody's talking about it. We've watched over the last 10 years just the mass conglomeration of industry. These giant players in the tech space and manufacturing space just swallowing each other up and becoming these giant multinational monsters and stuff. It's just one of those things. Sign of the times. One of them things. Just the way it's going to be. Yeah, Agario, exactly. Just a giant amoeba swallowing up all these other industries. Now, they're just these huge companies. It's funny. You look at like a product and it says, like you buy some crackers and it says Nabisco on it, but Nabisco is owned by General Electric and or whatever the fuck, you know what I mean? Like they've got this giant parent company that owns 90 different brands and is responsible for all the manufacturing and distribution of 90 different competing brands. It's just can't be good. It's not good for the consumer because it limits choice. It's not good for workers because it limits choice. Yeah, Procter & Gamble, Unilever, just all these crazy giant conglomerate companies that started like nothing like what they're doing now. They've just swallowed up all these other industries. All to give you the illusion of choice. Convinced tech nerds destroyed human interaction with social media. I mean, I don't know. I'm kind of two minds on that shit. On one hand, Do I think it's kind of nefarious? Yeah. On the other hand, human beings really had to choose to adopt it. You know what I mean? Yeah, tech nerds created these platforms, but it was really us as human beings that adopted it. So, we've chosen to interact with one another in different ways, I guess. I definitely feel left behind by it, for sure. I feel very much like a relic. I can only understand, people that are 10, 15 years older than me feel even worse. But I don't think we had a choice. They were too addictive. I mean, maybe. It seems very much like we had a choice, though. It seems to me very much like we still have a choice. Like there's nothing preventing us from tuning out of social media other than this like kind of like fake veneer of connectedness that social media gives people. And you can definitely use social media in a much more limited way. You know what I mean? There are definitely a lot of people out there that use it just to keep in touch with friends or family or whatever. There's nothing wrong with that, in my opinion. Just one of those things. I only use YouTube. There you go. Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I've basically, like, other than YouTube, which is where I do my job, I've basically, like, not been a part of social media for probably going on like 6 or 8 months now. Since I really like, I noticed that I was checking it more and more and spending more and more time wrapped up in arguments and blah, 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 blah. And I just decided, like, I'm going to stop this. And I really thought, like, man, this is going to be tough. You're going to miss. I didn't. I didn't miss it at all. But I think that's probably because I was raised with one foot in the pre-internet. You know what I mean? I remember what that was like. Like, I'm perfectly fine just, checking the news every once in a fucking while and not caring what your average fucking Joe Schmo has to say about it. And really not caring what your average, like, corporate bot pretending to be your average Joe Schmo thinks about it, which is increasingly what social media is. That's the thing about social media that I think is insidious, is that slowly but surely, even though it has this reputation for connecting people, it's really slowly but surely becoming just another controlled ad space for corporations. All the way up until the point where corporations are pretending to be regular people and acting like they're regular. That to me is creepy. Oh, here's some more fucking human noise for us to deal with. Now we got a jet. Man, I would love to go back in time to like the pre-industrial age and just sit on a stump in the middle of the fucking woods and just listen to the sound of silence, bro. Can you imagine how quiet the ancient world you know, fossil fuel engines and shit like that was? Like, you could really, like, one of my favorite things to do is to sit out here and listen to, like, the birds and the sounds of animals and the distant sounds. Every once in a while of people laughing or playing or whatever. Like, that to me is, like, soothing and therapeutic. But it's so hard to find, dude. It's one of the things. It's a point. There's this book that I really like by Michael Crichton called Timeline, which is about quantum time travel, basically. and this group of people has to be sent back in this quantum machine in order to save this professor that's stuck in like 13th century France or some shit. And that there's, you know, when they first arrive in the time where they've got to find this guy, there's this long kind of musing by one of the characters about how quiet it is, and it's actually unsettling for them at first. They're just like they're it's at first they don't even realize it. They're just like, why do I feel so exposed and why do I feel so strange? And then they realize it's because there's no engines, there's no planes, there's no air conditioning units kicking on, there's no cars driving by, there's no lawn mowers, there's no beeps and boops and buzzes from people's personal technology. You know, none of the things that have come to typify the human hand, the soundscape existed back then. And so there was just this calmness and stillness. And they note like how because of that they appear, you know, like a couple of miles outside of this little town called Mont Saint Mare, and the person, once they realize like, hey, you know, like that's what it is, it's that there's no sound, they start listening and they could hear like in the distance the sound of like a farmer's hoe hitting the ground, you know, the bray of an oxen, where normally they, you know, that level of sound probably would have been dampened by, you know, somebody interminably fixing their lawn in the middle of fucking January. But I honestly think that what we're talking about right now has greater implications than just, you know, like back in my day type of bitching. I really think that the soundscape is something that has a profound effect on human mental health. And I feel like being utterly and completely separated from nature by this like really abrasive sounding shit constantly and not being able to tune in. Because like right now, here's the sad thing. If you listen, you can hear that fucking engine going, but I can also hear through it the peeps of little birds. And if that wasn't there, if I could get rid of that and the sound of everybody's heater running and car idling and motorcycle starting, if I could get rid of that, there would be this beautiful kind of natural sound here. And every once in a while it is quiet enough for me to get, you know, 20, 30 minutes of sitting and listening to the birds and listening to the animals that live around here and listening to the sound of the wind blowing through the trees and the leaves and all that fun stuff. Like, you know, that it's so incredibly soothing to me to get that, but it's so rare. You know, our lives are just filled with surreptitious noise now. You know, when you're outside, it's this type of shit. It's airplanes going by. It's the sound of whatever road you live on. It's the sound of, you know, 3 different gardeners gardening in the middle of fucking January, but not, you know, not necessarily gardening, but like industrially blowing leaves around on a. And I gotta tell you too, the fact that that's still going shows you that like this idea that it's efficient is completely wrong. Like that's the argument that what people would make is like, oh well, yeah, these power, you know, 2-stroke engine gardening tools are just so efficient. And it's just like, then why are they interminable then? Why is this one dude's lawn only now showing signs of quiet? Like what could have possibly taken, like we're not dealing with acre lots where I live. These are like a tiny little yard. You know what I mean? Tiny little front yard, tiny little backyard. That's it. You know, if that shit was really efficient, there's no way that 30 minutes on I should be sitting and listening to that. And look, it was going when I started this 49 minutes. So almost an hour of labor with a 2-stroke motor open absolutely. You know, It's just, every once in a while I will get the privilege of being in a place that isn't so close to. You hear that? That's a whole different one. Or is that a plane? It's hard to tell sometimes. I think that might actually be a plane. It's just, it never stops. You know what I mean? Never stops. I was just, tuning in on the birds peeping and squeaking. Here's a fucking giant plane, or I don't think it's a helicopter. We live near a naval air station, near enough to be within its test pattern, and so jets. I see big AC-130s. I see big Sikorsky helicopters, like the big. What are the ones that have like two blades? I can't remember the name of them now off the top of my head. Constant. So that's one of the sad things about it is like you would say like, oh, go up into the mountains, and I live close enough to the mountains where I could take day trips up there if I want. Maybe not now because the snowpack is so high, most of the roads are closed up there, but like in the summer and the spring I could go up in the mountains and shit. But you can't escape it, because up in the mountains you'll hear some of the same shit. You've got forest service guys doing controlled burns, or doing cutting back the undergrowth to prevent forest fires and shit. So they're using some of the same tools that you get here. And you've got these ceaseless, endless helicopters, planes. You know what I mean? Industrial trucks rumbling up the road. There's really very few places on the planet where you can experience that real silence anymore. And to me, it's just so therapeutic. What's that book called? Timeline. It's Timeline by Michael Crichton. I really like it. I've read it a bunch of times. It's funny. It's not very like well reviewed, I guess. Like people make fun of it, but I don't know, I really like the book. It's just an interesting book for sure. I went outside to take out the trash, and I must have tuned out the noise of all the cars, but thinking about it now, it's really, really loud. Yeah, I mean, it's funny because it's just become our normal. Like if you were raised in the last 50 years, your normal is the sound of engines, the sound of fucking fossil fuels being burned at a high rate, planes, trains, automobiles. I lived for quite a few years in a condo that was built literally right next to the train tracks. And so part of my day, all day, every day, was hearing the incredibly loud rumble of that train. And it's funny, like, that's one of the things that, like, is soothing to me now. It's the sound of a fucking train. How backwards is that? But, like, I don't mind living near a train. The last house I had was not super close, but close enough to a train that we heard them, and they hardly ever bothered me. There were times where there were trains back to back to back where it got a little annoying, but for the most part, I think the sound of a train is soothing now. That's what passes for soothing in the modern age. I seeded my entire yard with clover. It doesn't grow very tall, requires no maintenance, and flowers beautifully. Yeah, our lawn here, and this is just due to the laziness of the landowner, is no longer like Bermuda grass. So if I were to go out on my front porch and shoot my neighbor's lawns right now and show you guys, almost all of them are green still, even though it's fucking dead ass cold, and has been for months, for a couple of months. My lawn is pretty dead. Like, it's got some green sprigs here and there, like the little remnants of what used to be Bermuda grass, but most of it is just like been taken over by what you call it, dandelions and just scrub grass, and that dies in the cold. Did you guys freeze? I feel like the Grinch, sitting in my cave above Whoville and hearing the sounds of their celebration and going, that noise, the whiz bangers and the bip boppers, the tong tangers and the tip toppers, the clip cloppers and the ship stoppers, the noise, noise, noise. I feel that pain. I feel that pain, Mr. Grinch. I mean, to be honest with you, I can't really afford the type of place that I would really like. It's just not in the cards for me. I don't make anywhere near enough money to sustain it. And that's the truth for 99.9% of humanity, I'm pretty sure. So, like, in order to escape this, the interminable fart of humanity that just ruins everything, I would have to live, in a place that was secluded and far from a main road. So I would have to have a place that has a private drive. Right there, you're already talking about, in most instances, way too much money. Even if the piece of land that my shit is situated on isn't that big. So, gotta love it. So loud and annoying and unnecessary. And it just gets worse as they walk towards you, Ugh. Yeah, man. Take care of that lawn. Got a super chat. Uh-oh, I missed a super chat. What have I done? What have I done? I'm scrolling back. Dude, I must have missed it a minute ago from one dog to another. Thanks, Anprim. Appreciate it. I found it. Thank you. I just feel like the end result of this is going to be this dude walking right up to me and blowing that thing in my ear. I feel stalked by the sound. I feel like it's some kind of beast that's hunting me. Just gets louder and louder.
Oh, yeah.
I'm just doing my old man bitching about the sounds of living in a neighborhood.
Yeah.
The interminable fucking lawn work that happens. Want to sit out in the morning and have your cup of coffee and listen to the birds peep, and it's just like, nope, you don't get to. You don't get to, because the fucking Fosters 3 doors down have to have their yard completely done over in a time when nothing is growing because it's the middle of winter. Yippee and hooray. Also, they can feel good because their house looks just like the house next to it, just like the house next to it, just like the house next to it. Just like, man, that's not a trade. That's not a trade worth taking. Two thumbs down. Smoking isn't good for you. I haven't heard that.
No, it's not like every pack doesn't have a little warning on it. And it's a million PSAs.
Like, I know. Sitting online and fucking watching a dude for hours and hours and hours is not good for you. There's a lot of shit that's not good for us that we do. Paul, have you had your water today? Did you remember to wipe? Oh, God. Thanks for the reminders. How would I live? How would I subsist without your input? Pretty women, smiling sweetly, combing their hair, dancing, pretty women. I was watching Sweeney Todd the other day, not the Tim Burton Sweeney Todd, because I actually like the singing in Sweeney Todd. So, dude, I want to do a side, like, I wish, copyright sucks, because I wish I could do a side-by-side where we sit and we listen to that song, or Pirelli's Miracle Elixir Overture, or whatever the fuck, any song from that, and then put it next to the Tim Burton. It's just like the quality of the singing is non-existent in the Tim Burton one, and it's like the point, to me, of the show is the performance of it and the beauty of the songs and shit. When you're talking about musical theater, it's like you're using a song to replace dialogue, and so the quality of it is immensely important. There's one version of Sweeney Todd that I love the most that's on YouTube. You can find it. I don't know. It's like at the London Symphony Orchestra. And it starts, you'll know you've got the right one if it starts with people walking out, like the cast walks out and they're dressed normally. and they sit and they're standing in front of lecterns like they're just going to do a performance of the songs. And then during the opening overture, The Tale of Sweeney Todd, they slowly but surely like rip parts of their clothes off and reveal their costumes and turn it into a production. It's the coolest thing. I've seen Sweeney Todd 3 times, I think. 3. And I've seen it done at basically 2 separate... No, I've only seen it twice. I've seen it done at 2 separate levels of production value. One of them like super Broadway style production with the big elaborate sets and the stuff, and then I saw a very stripped down version of Sweeney Todd, and I liked the stripped down version way better. It was way more intimate. But it's just so fucking weird to me that they would make, because it's like they could have hired the people that are in the show to be in the movie. It didn't have to be a Johnny Depp and Helena Bonham Carter vehicle. It didn't have to be an Ali G vehicle. It could have been something really special. And they decided to cast a bunch of people who can't really carry a tune. Like one of the worst ones, one of the worst victims of it is Mrs. Lovitz's opening overture, the Worst Pies in London. That is such a tough song because it's so dependent on not only like really great singing, but like singing in that super Cockney kind of gutter accent that Mrs. Lovitz has. It's just so good. And when you listen to it done masterfully, it's just like you can't... Angela Lansbury was an amazing Mrs. Lovitz, for sure. The one that I'm talking about is not Angela Lansbury in the main role, but it's it's just night and day to me. It would have made $50,000 at the box office. I don't know if that's true.
I mean, that Jersey Boys, that was all cast from the play for the most part.
And that was a huge hit.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they cast people that were in the play that could actually sing. That could actually... Imagine if, like, they'd cast Johnny Depp as Richie Valli.
Or Frankie Valli.
Frankie Valli, yeah. And he just did, like, a bad impersonation. You know what I mean? Just, like, a horrible off-tune impersonation. That's basically what happened to Sweeney Todd. Like, there's a number of things about that production that are just so wrong. It's just like Sweeney Todd is described multiple times in the play and in the movie, weirdly enough, as this big, bulky, intimidating guy. He's not supposed to be like a Legolas elfish character like he is in the fucking Burton movie. It just he doesn't fit. You know, Johnny Depp is a great casting choice for Edward Scissorhands, you know, because he's thin and wiry and small and, you know, dark and all of that stuff. It works. Sweeney Todd is supposed to be, like, his whole thing is he overpowers men and slits their throats. Like, how Johnny Depp would have his ass kicked the first time he tried it. Sweeney Todd is supposed to be a big, intimidating, ham-fisted kind of character with a big, rich, baritone voice. And nothing that I just said could be used to describe Johnny Depp. And yet he's in the main role. It's like... And then, like, fucking Sacha Baron Cohen as Pirelli. Sacha Baron Cohen can't sing. And Pirelli is just like his songs in the show are just amazingly technical. It's like, why? And it seems so weird too because it's not just like everybody sucks in the movie, because I feel like they did hire some musical theater people for some of the lesser known, like some of the supporting roles. And so you've got like I can't remember his name, but the guy that plays the sailor that falls in love with Sweeney Todd's daughter, Joanna, and the Judge Turpin is keeping her or whatever. Like those two roles in the show, and Judge Turpin and Beetle Bamford, that group of people can all sing, but this core group, of Sweeney Todd, Mrs. Lovitz, the little kid that is Pirelli's assistant that gets adopted by Sweeney and Mrs. Lovitz. None of them can sing. I mean, Edward Scissorhands is, it's great. It's a fantastic Tim Burton movie, for sure.
But he just got stuck in this rut. It's like everything must be Helena Bonham Carter and Johnny Depp, no matter what.
Yeah, it just got, his he didn't grow enough. He didn't choose different. He just did his same spin on. I think it really started when he stopped making unique content and started giving his spin on this or his, you know what I mean, like Alice in Wonderland, or his spin on Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, you know what I mean, and that just started to become wearisome to people. I think, at least half of what makes Tim Burton movies, his earlier movies, good is the unique universe that he creates to surround these stories. Mm-hmm. And when he's just taking another established universe and putting his weird little Tim Burton spin on it, it doesn't hit as hard. Sleepy Hollow was good. Yeah, but Sleepy Hollow is not it's an established story, but it's not like a universe. It's not like there's not like a universally recognized Sleepy Hollow, Mm-hmm. And so it worked because, it's kind of a blank canvas. But when you're going to make a movie that's competing with a movie that is just inscribed in people's minds, like the original Willy Wonka is, and you're going to try and make things that are reminiscent of that, but with a little twist on it, people don't like it. To me, it unfavorably compares constantly with the original. That's the problem with it. Anytime I see a remake of a movie that doesn't need a remake, I know I'm going to not like it, because it just, at every step, unfavorably compares with the original. It's one of the trends that I'm really, boomerish on. This, let's not make new things. Let's remake old things. There's all this talk during the release of the Star Wars sequels, the modern Star Wars, that this generation now has its Star Wars. And it's like, no, here's the thing. Star Wars is so great that this generation has it. Like that, you know what I mean? Like, it's if you sit down with a kid who's never seen the original Star Wars and you show them the original Star Wars, they're going to fucking love it. They didn't need their own Gen Z Star Wars. And it sucked. And there were so many things about that were just so blatantly offensive to me. The tokenistic including of the lesbian relationship, but they did it in such a way that it's only in one scene briefly, and then so they could cut it out for China. Yeah, wow, how progressive of you. Yeah, thanks. You know what I mean? It's just like they're trying to give the veneer that they're doing something progressive. They're doing something inclusive. Like, yeah, LGBT people exist in the Star Wars universe, but instead of making them, an integral part of the story and humanizing them, it's just two characters nobody knows the name of kissing at the end of the movie so that they can chop it out of the Chinese and overseas versions. Their insistence on retelling the same story too. It's the Tim Burton effect all over again. It's like they went back and were like, let's do the Luke Skywalker narrative, but with a female character this time. And it compares unfavorably at every instance to the original. Rey and Kylo are some of the worst characters I've seen in film. I don't know. I think Kylo Ren had flashes of good, like not as a character, but performance-wise, there were flashes where I really liked Kylo Ren. Like, I didn't mind some of the things that people ripped on Kylo Ren for. Like, he was petulant. I was like, yeah, I mean, That's okay. There are people out there that are like that. But Rey is just absolutely terrible. Just terrible in every conceivable way as a character. Blank slate, tabula rasa, anything to anyone, no arc, no humanity, just a fucking foil for storytelling. It's just awful. Just a terrible character. Terribly acted, terribly conceived, terribly designed, lazy, shitty. Movie turns him into a crybaby. I didn't, once again, I didn't mind the fact that he was not Darth Vader too. In fact, I kind of liked the fact that he wasn't, like your typical Sith Lord. That he was more conflicted and more immature. Like all that stuff. Those are, because it changed. It was a switch from the original. It was a different type of villain. I was cool with that. But what's even more annoying is people acting like the prequels are watchable movies now. Dude, they kind of are. In comparison, like if you're in the mood for some Star Wars extended universe, you could now, unfortunately, you could do way worse than watching the prequels. That's just the sad truth of it. The sequels were so bad, so disjointed, so ill-conceived, so poorly designed, so shitty, that going back and watching the sad and substandard prequels it actually feels more like Star Wars than it used to. You can see that at least, if even if it was misguided and misinterpreted. No. See, if your take is the prequels are legit good now, I'm not backing you up on that take. I'm just saying you could now, sadly, you could now do worse. If you want some lightsabers and stuff, and you don't want to watch the original trilogy, I would recommend that you watch the prequels before the sequels. That's just the sad state of the fucking franchise. It went from great to pretty bad to unwatchable. I can't even imagine rewatching. Like I haven't even had the impulse to rewatch any of the new Star Wars. I don't even remember much about them because I only saw them one time in the theater. I went and saw every one of those in the theater once. And that was it. Like I feel no impetus to go see any of it again. None of it resonated with me in a meaningful way. It was just underwhelming, and underwhelming. Yeah, Rogue One had the one scene in it that was worth watching, which is at the very end or whatever, near the very end, Darth Vader breaking into the ship and killing a bunch of people. And when you know, the one scene worth watching is just the return of a beloved character from the original series. Nothing new, nothing interesting. Just leaning super hard on that original. I've never been interested in Star Wars, and my boyfriend wants me to watch all 9. Tell him you'll watch the first 3, the original 3, and watch them, and you won't be sad you did. They're decent. They're good. They're fun. They're cool to look at. They've got some great effects, special effects work that holds up today. Great storytelling, very much like a Western. Got a lot of Western tropes, got a lot of film noir tropes, adventure serial tropes. Just very much like a celebration of the type of movies and media that George Lucas grew up watching and enjoying. Oh boy, look at these little peepers.
Oh, yeah.
Little stripy heads.
Mm-hmm.
Nice stripes. Are these sparrows? I know we looked it up at some
Yeah.
point. I think they're sparrows. Boy, man, it's a feast down there right now.
Mm-hmm.
They're munching, crunching. Yeah, did we look into it? And there's like 3 different genders of these birds or whatever.
Yeah, it's like the male or the female can have the stripe or
Yeah.
not have the stripe.
Nice stripes. Still been waiting to see that yellow butt again though.
Yeah.
Man. That's my favorite. That yellow butt warbler or whatever it was that comes over here sometimes, man. That yellow butt. I gots to see it. You watch the Last of Us TV show? No, I have not. I don't really, the answer is no to 99% of TV shows.
Especially new ones.
Yeah. Like, I will not watch a TV show that isn't finished because I don't want to be left holding my dick like I was with fucking Deadwood. I miss super chats. Oh noes. Oh noes. Let me look. I just wish YouTube made it easier for me to find these sometimes, because I just can't. Ever played Receiver? I'd be interested in hear your take on the dreamlike existentialist. I have not played it, no. And testing. Can you see this? If so, I missed an SP. XO. Huh? Okay, thanks. Whatever you say. Yeah, that's why I won't watch these shows. Like, because I'm afraid I'll get into it, I'll get invested in it in some way, and then it'll just end. That's exactly what happened to Deadwood. They just decided, like, nah, we're not going to finish it. We're not going to do a final season. We're just going to dump it. Like, right in the middle of the narrative. And you're like... Then they came back, like, almost 20 years later and made another, like, a movie to try and wrap it up. And the movie is good, but it's just weird. Mm-hmm. It's weird because everybody in the show has aged, obviously, but it feels like their world just hit pause for like 15 years. Mm-hmm. It's like all the same problems are still extant and none of them have been, you know what I mean? Everybody's still kind of in the same place they were at the end of the show. It's just very strange. But at least it gives some closure to the narrative. Mm-hmm. It was good for that, if nothing else.
I don't know if you watch Pushing Daisies, but that happened to Pushing Daisies too, where they just abruptly canceled it in the 2nd season, and they had to do this crazy wrap up.
Yeah, that sucks. Yeah, Deadwood is great. So I just refuse to get into a show that doesn't pay off, and so I wait until shows have run their course, and then I'll, if I hear that it's one that's got a proper wrap up or whatever, I'll watch it. But I'm just less into the storytelling style of a show. Mm-hmm. A show is really asking you to spend way more time and effort on characters than a movie is. And I like the economy of a movie. I think, an hour and a half to 2 hours is plenty of time to establish a narrative and finish it. And, movies, most of them at the very least, pay off, No matter how, good or bad they were, there's a beginning, middle, and an end. There's an arc that is definable.
It's been a while since we watched like some old movies. We were on a kick for a while with like 50s, 60s, 70s movies.
Oh yeah, we should should watch a few more of those because we just keep like discovering these great movies.
Yeah.
Was that one called that we really liked? Night of the Hunter.
Yeah.
Like that movie blew my socks off, bro. I couldn't believe I hadn't seen that movie, which is so great. That's what I like about shows. I used to be more into movies, but I love shows. I love being immersed in them for a long period of time. Yeah, I mean it's an upside and a downside in my opinion. Like right now, I got to be honest with you. I'm in season 4, episode 5 or 6 or whatever of Breaking Bad, and I'm starting to kind of wear thin on some of the characters. Like Walt is starting to really wear thin with me because he's just so stupid. Like he's so smart when it comes to chemistry, but in every other way he's so just an unlikable character. Just a dude with an ego the size of a fucking Mack truck who is constantly imposing on the people around him in order to play out this power fantasy. He's just not a likable dude. Like, and his wife is even worse. Like, there's so much of her in this season too. It's just the Skylar White show now, and she is just such a hypocrite, you know what I mean? And it's like in a movie setting, it's fun to hate somebody, but like it's just like episode to episode to episode. I probably got like 10 hours of Breaking Bad left that I've got to spend with these two characters who I just increasingly cannot stand. I just roll my eyes at Walt now. He's just doing the stupidest shit. Like in the last episode, Walt decided to try and like jab at Gus Fring because he's taken Jesse away to do other jobs and shit by having these poor like little immigrant ladies help him clean his meth lab. And of course, like Gus has them deported back to Honduras or whatever the fuck. And I'm just like, what? And Walt acts like, what? Why are you doing that? Don't take it out on them. And it's like, what did you think he was going to do? Take it out on you? Like the whole point of your relationship is that he needs you and that he's going to accommodate all your crazy shit because you're making him millions of dollars a day. Yeah. Like until he can find somebody that can do that for him, you're protected. But anybody else that you fucking involve in this is going to get, you know what I mean? It's just like, ugh. And it's all because he's not happy enough with the power of being a multimillionaire that makes $13 million a year or whatever. Like that's not what he's after. He doesn't like the money is secondary. So, you know, I understand that's why his character's well written and well acted and I like it, but it's just like he's just gotten so smug and unlikable that it's just hard to, you know, I'm going to finish the show and I'm not going to hate the show, I don't think. But it's definitely like suffering from just too much time with these characters. Too much time for me to learn to hate these characters.
And just this season is more tension.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely like pumped the brakes. This last season especially has been more just about the character flaws of Walt and his wife. You think Tony remained far more likable in The Sopranos? Yes. Yes, absolutely. Like, Tony's, you know, is similar to Walter White in a lot of ways. And in fact, there's a lot of similarity between the narratives of these shows. If you really understand, like if you're deep into it, you can see that this show was written from a perspective that included The Sopranos. Just parts of the narrative are just too similar to ignore. You know, Skylar White, one of the reasons why she's so unlikable is that she tries to hold this moral authority, like she's so like she's better than Walt, even though she's benefiting from all of his illegal doings.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, she starts off, you think she's going to do the right thing and leave him, because that is the right thing. That's how you protect your children from being involved in a drug war or some shit.
Mm-hmm.
You pack up your shit and leave. And at that point, if she did that, she would have had moral authority. She would have really, like, have taken a moral stand that was understandable and shown that she was the type of person that lived by the strength of her own convictions. But all she did was have a fling with her boss and then immediately rationalize what Walt was doing,
Mm-hmm.
and try and take control of the finances again, and blah, 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 blah. And so she's just unlikable. And that's very much what, like, that's, I could say that same arc for Carmela Soprano. Carmela has this moral uh, opposition to what Tony does, but she's more enamored with living a life where she can go buy $10,000 worth of clothes and
Mm-hmm.
drive a brand new Porsche every year and live in a big fucking mansion on a hill.
Mm-hmm.
She cares more about that than she cares about the safety of her children.
Mm-hmm.
And ultimately, because Carmela can't summon the strength to just leave Tony and take the kids away from the fucking madness that is living adjacent to a mob boss, those kids have their father's brains blown out in their face.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? They come that close to, and we don't even know in the narrative if they pop the fucking kids too.
Yeah.
It would make sense that they do.
Mm-hmm.
Because, you know, when we're talking about these kinds of like mob vendettas, often you
It's
don't
a
want to.
message too.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
in The Godfather, you remember
Yeah.
The Godfather Part 2, when it goes back in time to the origins of The Godfather, where his mother takes him, like his brother is killed
Mm-hmm.
at a funeral for another brother,
Mm-hmm.
and his mother takes Vito
Mm-hmm.
into this mob boss and goes, please, like, my son, look, he's not like these other boys, he's sensitive, and please just let him live, he won't come back to haunt you. And the fucking guy just looks her right in the eye and says no.
Mm-hmm.
And has her blown away and has him hunted, and he barely escapes and shit. So that's one of the things about Sopranos that a lot of people don't talk about, because it's like, oh, Tony got killed. Well, Tony and his whole family probably fucking got killed.
Yeah.
They're not going to leave Tony's son behind to enact a vendetta against them. They're not going to leave any kind of political vacuum where Tony's old crew might, you know what I mean? In fact, they deal with that when Carmine dies in the show. When Carmine dies, there's this little Carmine Phil Leotardo split that fucks with everybody's money, because it was ambiguous at the time that the leader died who was taking over. You know, he's got a daughter that's just the right age to start fucking taking over. He's got a son. We know that AJ is probably not capable of being a mob boss, but they don't know that. You know, they don't know AJ like we do. They don't get to see him in his life. So Carmela basically, in my opinion, kills her children by refusing to give up her Cartier diamonds and her trips to Italy and her this, that, and the other fucking shit. And the same is true of Skylar White. Skylar White has a brand newborn baby and a son with special needs, both of which are in the line of fire because all of these cartel freaks know where they live. You know what I mean? And she's just like completely and utterly unrealistic. She keeps asking Walt, like, we're safe, right? And it's like, no, you know you're not safe. Your husband is involved in a black market Mexican cartel. Nobody is safe that's involved in that. And it's just stupid. She's a grown-ass person.
And like her brother-in-law's a DEA agent, like she knows what the cartel does. It's not
exactly. She's heard all his fucking weird stories and shit.
Yeah.
She saw how, like, you know, he almost got blown up in a cartel hit, and then he's almost killed by two members of a fucking drug cartel and shit, and crippled by it. She just knows, like, no, you and your children are not safe. But she wants Walt to tell her, yes, you're safe, so that she can have plausible deniability and keep taking all the money. You know, and that's just a very similar character arc.
But what's worse with Skylar is like she's getting extra no Dexter involved.
Well, yeah, because she has the same kind of drives that that Walt does, just on a smaller scale.
Yeah.
She wants to be the boss of the household.
Mm-hmm.
She wants to control every dollar that's spent, even though she's really not supportive at all to him making it.
Yeah.
She wants him to deliver it to her so that she can dole it out as she sees fit. Can't buy your son a new car. You can't, that was ridiculous. Like, they live in a fucking suburban neighborhood. Nobody is gonna think twice about them having a fucking car. Anybody can go down and sign a fucking car lease that they can barely pay, and people do it all the time. So it's not, so she was just exerting her fucking control. And that's exactly what Carmela does, you remember?
Yeah.
Like, one of the ways she assuages her guilt is like, well, I'm going to take this fucking blood money and I'm going to buy a big speculative house. I'm going to have a house built and shit.
But Skylar gets deeper in just that she wants to run the money laundering operation.
Well, yeah, but it's because she wants to use the money in a way that's not criminal.
Yeah.
She wants to take control of the finances and justify the illegality behind it all. It's the same shit, just a different narrative. The relationship between Walt and Jesse Pinkman is basically the relationship between Tony Soprano and Christopher Moltisanti. Christopher looks up to Tony and thinks in his mind that Tony has his best interests at heart, but Tony looks at Christopher as a useful idiot, basically. It's a guy that is so enamored with him that he'll do anything he tells him and not question it.
And he goes through deliberate steps to tie Christopher more to him.
And the same thing is happening with, Walt. Walt is increasingly made uncomfortable when Jesse Pinkman has his own thing going on. When Walt isn't the center of Jesse Pinkman's universe, Walt is uncomfortable because he doesn't have his little lackey. So there's a lot of similarities for sure, but I do think that Tony Soprano is a much more agreeable anti-hero than Walt is. He's, there's something about Tony that's like childlike, and it's really played up in the movie, or in the show, just how immature he is at the heart of things, and how little he's changed since he was a teenager and shit. He's just very much,
well, that smile he has is just perfect.
Yeah, I mean, the casting there is, I mean, I think that Bryan Cranston was probably the best choice for Walt too. I think he does an amazing job. It's a credit to his acting ability that I even feel this way about the character at this point. But it's just harder to like him, harder to care what happens to him than it was for Tony, because Tony had this big kid kind of thing that underwrote everything that he did. And it almost like draws you into being the same kind of apologist for violence and death and murder as everybody else in the show is.
His impulsiveness makes more sense.
Yeah.
Like, there's like a clear emotion behind certain impulses.
And he's sweet. You know what I mean? Like, there's a sweetness about him that like an innocence that it's hard, it's hard to judge him as harshly as you would somebody else for the horrible things that he does, because it's just Tony,
And he's played up against all these other bigger assholes too. It's like, well, yeah, Tony's got a lot of problems, but he's not Ralph, at least.
You think Walt Jr. has a healthy relationship with his dad? Walt Jr. is one of the most unlucky children on the planet. Walt Jr. has a horrible deficiency that makes him dependent on these two people who are just raging narcissists at the end of the day. And he's learning to navigate like one of them. Like, he just, in the last episode, he just basically like braces his dad, blackmails his dad. You know, Walt just pulls into a used car lot, and he's like, no, if you want to buy me off, give me a new Mustang, or give me a new Dodge Challenger, or whatever the fuck it is. It's not even mentioning the fact that he's a junior. Well, I mean, if you look at it, both Walt and Tony have a young son that's about the same age in the show, who is the antithesis of them, who just isn't built like them. You know, Walt Jr., even though he does things, probably because he learned them from his parents, he's not a conniving individual. He's got like a real, he's just a pacifistic, artistic, he's got the soul of a poet kind of thing, just like AJ. You know what I mean?
So then Walt adopts Jesse and Tony adopts Christopher to be like their real son.
Right. Yeah. Because they're more like them. You know what I mean? They have the more ambition like they do, and they're not morally opposed or just physically incapable of violence. And, you know, so yeah, it's the surrogate son thing. And then the struggle, the seemingly pointless struggle just for power and authority. That's what The Sopranos is about, and that's what, you know, if Tony was a little more lax and a little, you know, less resistant to his brother, you know, being the actual figurehead and him just kind of running things, if he was willing to kind of, but he's got to run it all. You know, if he was more willing to see a copacetic relationship and a mutually beneficial relationship with the families in New York, there wouldn't be all this constant drama back and forth. If he was actually good at his job and actually aware of his position, he'd be fine, probably. But, and the same thing goes for Walt. Like, if Walt hadn't fucked over Gus 90 million times and had just taken that fucking lab and ran with it.
But he had to have Jesse.
Had to have Jesse. Because Gail was just too independently smart.
Yep.
Too capable of learning what Walt does, which Walt likes to paint as something nobody in the world can do. Like, he might be a brilliant chemist, but he's really put off by the fact that ultimately somebody that isn't a brilliant chemist could learn to do things just like he does. So put off by that fact that he's now, as of the last episode, put Hank back on the fucking case. Hank was just about to be done looking into the blue meth. He thought it was over. Thought Gail was Heisenberg and blah, 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 blah. And then fucking dumbass Walt has to go to dinner over there and be like, no, I don't think he was the main guy.
He's clearly just a student to a bigger master.
And it's just like, oh, here we go again. Dumbass Walt. Are you interested in chemistry and drug synthesis? No. And even if I was, from what I've read, this show is not a good place to learn anything real about making meth.
No.
They invented a whole host of different shit, and they, you know, obviously they're not going to like make the show an instructive video on how to make meth.
Yeah.
So they've just created this kind of mad scientist kind of thing.
Like the blue thing, they've already tested that, and that wouldn't happen. It's just like a fun color to...
Yeah. They had to have some way to make his meth visually distinct from normal meth in order to play up this idea that it's just super good.
Yeah. And it's something that's distinctive for Hank to follow, too.
Yeah. It's something that's easily traceable, so they can map the drug network and stuff, because, you know, a lot of times the problem with finding these meth manufacturers is that meth is meth is meth is meth, you know. Could have been made here locally, could have been imported from somewhere else, looks like every other bag that we seize off a junkie. Who knows where they got it.
They can make it with whatever. They're not necessarily looking for some super lab.
No. Chernobyl did a pretty good job dumbing down the science just enough. Sure. I mean, because Chernobyl really wasn't about the science. It was about the futile attempt of science to contain its own disaster. And that, you just got to tell what happened, you know. They tried dumping not graphite. You wouldn't want to do that. They tried dumping, what was it?
Uranium.
What were they, like, flying?
Oh, it's like silicon sand or whatever on top of it. Yeah.
Boron, yeah, and sand, yeah.
But yeah, the real danger there is mainly that every time something like this has happened, they've fucked around until they couldn't cover it up no more.
Yeah. It's always a big, giant state secret.
Yeah.
Until it gets so bad that it becomes an international issue. Yeah. They can't hide it anymore. And that's one of the reasons why I'm so against nuclear power. Because it would be one thing if there was some sort of international agency where it was like, as soon as something like this happens, you tell the international community about it, and immediately the best scientists in the world are all working on it, and you get right to actually stopping it.
Mm-hmm. And the scariest thing about it being here is, like, it's not the government running the nuclear power plant. It's like PG&E or right. Duke Energy, which both have huge issues with maintaining their shit.
Right. It's just there's so much trust involved, because you know, you'll argue with people about this nuclear shit, and they'll say, like, oh, more modern nuclear reactors don't do this or don't do that. That's what they said about Chernobyl. Mm-hmm. They said literally that an RMP reactor does not melt down. It just literally, it's an impossibility. Mm-hmm. But something they didn't foresee happened, and it melted down.
Yeah, and it's like, what I'm more worried about here is, like, even if it is top of the line, they're not going to maintain it because it's cheaper not to.
Right. Right. I mean, it's just like with airplanes and shit. We're starting to see, like, these planes aren't being maintained properly, and you would think, like, hey, we don't want these planes to crash. Let's maintain them. Let's spend extra money to make sure that they're running tip top all the time. Nope. Thunderfoot works with nuclear reactors. He says nuclear energy is safe. The Russians involved in the fucking building and maintenance of the Chernobyl reactor work with nuclear reactors and said that it was safe. The scientists and nuclear physicists involved in creating the 3 Mile Island nuclear reactor said that it was safe. Mm-hmm. Everybody, like, there's always been a group of scientists and technologists that say nuclear is safe. And, you know, I'm sorry to say, like, you can't go, well, look at this, it's a small failure rate. When we're talking about something like nukes, you can't afford the small failure rate. A small failure rate still irradiates an entire portion of the fucking planet for 2,000 years.
Yeah, and it's like with Chernobyl, again, it was theoretically unfailable, but putting it in practice is a whole different thing.
Monkey assure you he know how to handle spicy rock. Yeah. Would you be pro fusion reactors? No. You know what I'm pro? This is a crazy fact. Okay. There is a giant nuclear reactor over my head right now that bombards the planet with an insane amount of energy. I think, like, every minute the planet is bombarded with enough energy to run it, if we could collect it at 100% rate, to run it for a year. Why don't we focus our technological fucking might on creating better photovoltaic cells? And why don't we use the land that would be sequestered away for nuclear plants and the area around them in case of because that's, you know, they do that anyway. See, here's the thing. This is the funny thing. Here in America, nuclear reactors are built in areas that have low population or no population density, in case what is impossible happens. That alone should tell you they don't 100% trust this shit. And when it comes to something as destructive as nuclear, you just can't do it.
But what's a solar panel going to do?
Yeah, nothing.
It might fall on someone.
Yeah, maybe. I think a combination of, you know, mass adoption of solar and mass investment in increasing the efficiency of solar with wind, geothermal, hydrothermal, like or hydroelectric. That sort of stuff could more than handle our power needs.
The reason why they don't want to do solar is because it's mainly like a one and done investment. With nuclear, you're still paying the power company to continuously supply. But with a solar panel, you slap it on, you install it, and then you're good.
Well, it's a DIY thing. It
Yeah.
could conceivably as the technology gets more and more available and better, it could conceivably allow people to decouple themselves from the utility companies.
Mm-hmm.
You no longer need PG&E to maintain an insane bunch of wires coming into your house in order to power it. You just got a whole house battery, and you've got a big solar array on your roof. You don't need power. Now you can just do your it's people asserting economic control in an area that's been completely and utterly controlled by corporations forever. A huge amount of Las Vegas is run on solar. When we were driving, we went to Las Vegas recently. When we were driving in, we drove by this huge solar field that just went on and on and on. And it was covering just desert.
Mm-hmm.
Land that, while beautiful and necessary as habitats, there's so much of it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so non-destructive to put things on it. It's just...
And it's not good for us to live on. It's not like
Right.
taking livable or even arable land. It's not like farming land either.
You can put that shit out in the desert, just put huge solar arrays and power a huge amount. Like a huge amount of the Las Vegas area is powered by solar. I think it's something like 35% of the power. And think about it, it's Las Vegas, which probably draws way more power than your average city of the same size, just due to the huge casino industry and the massive displays and all that shit. Probably draws way more power than your average city its size. And 35-40% of it is powered by solar.
And imagine if all those buildings within the city also had their own solar panels.
A lot of them do.
Yeah.
Like slowly but surely people have started to adopt solar, but it's just not the same amount of fervor isn't given to solar as developing things like nuclear or developing things like more efficient fossil fuel burning engines and shit. Mm-hmm. Because that allows the current power structure to remain intact. And solar is a sea change. Oh yeah, Paul, I'd happily have an unshielded nuclear reactor in my living room. What do you think about that? Cool. Good for you, buddy. No, I mean, it's just... I think people that are pro-nuclear are just way too trusting of the human species. Way too trusting.
I mean, there's a reason they guard nuclear reactors with guns. You don't see them doing that with the solar panels.
There's no need.
Yeah.
There's no need. If somebody does do a terrorism on or on solar panels, you just replace the solar panels, you know what I mean? It doesn't make the surrounding area radioactive for 3,000 years. Fry an egg on your solar panel. Yeah, maybe you could. Mm-hmm. Have a combination stovetop / solar panel.
Yeah.
How do you know, Paul? What do you mean, how do I know? How do I know that nuclear reactors blow up? Because I can read. There are people that just are unwilling to admit that these things keep happening. They try and act like, oh, yeah, that was all just old nuclear reactors. It's like this continues to happen into the modern age with more modern reactors.
And like with their history of covering shit up, how many other things have been like successfully covered up that were on a smaller scale?
Yeah. And it's just like,
Their first instinct is to cover up.
yeah. And if you look at every one of these nuclear disasters, all of them were some inherent flaw in the design of the reactor that wasn't foreseen by the engineers and physicists and scientists that designed it and the people that built it. So people will go like, "Oh, the only reason Fukushima melted down is because all of the diesel engines were the cooling system ran on diesel and they were all swamped." And I was like, "Yeah, it's because the people that built it didn't foresee the possibility of a 10-foot fucking tsunami hitting it, even though they should have, because Japan has a fucking huge, rich, and storied history with tsunamis."
Well, they're the one that came up with the name tsunami.
How did they not foresee that? That's my point. You had the best and brightest in Japan design and create and put into effect a giant nuclear bomb in the middle of a fucking residential area that a tsunami hit and caused a meltdown. You know, that wasn't clocked in. That wasn't part of the design. And that's why when people go like, "Oh, that can't happen," I'm just like, what you're saying is that we've reached the end of science when it comes to nuclear reactors, and that we can create an absolutely perfect thing. From what I can see, nothing like that exists.
And even the perfect thing still needs to be maintained.
Well, that's the problem.
Yeah.
There's no piece of technology on this planet that will run in perpetuity without being carefully maintained. And that's what I'm afraid of. I'm not afraid of the boogeyman of it just blowing up for no reason. I'm afraid of human decision making going like, let's skip the regular maintenance. Let's only do it every other month.
We don't need this fully staffed, or we don't need to have as many trained people here. And
you know, let's fire half of our workforce and just have, you know, the nuclear engineers pull doubles for a few months. Because that's how this shit happens. That's what I don't trust. That's what you can't fucking convince me that they've gotten rid of. What if it was run by robots? Robots are still maintained and built by people.
And they still need ongoing maintenance.
Yep. We're not living in a maintenance-free environment run by AI just yet.
And if it's all robots, that means that it could be disabled in a terrorist incident really easily.
Sure. Or, you know, have terrorists either disable the robots or hack into them and change their fucking program routine or whatever the fuck. You know what I mean? There's still these eventualities that have to be accounted for.
Yeah, it's like the U.S. hacked Iran developing nuclear fuel.
Yeah, they came up with a Stuxnet worm.
Yeah.
Or whatever that escaped into the wild and affected a bunch of... But yeah, they created a virus that was meant so that they could take remote control over the nuclear facilities in Iran. Let's build more of these. No. Yeah, but wind turbines kill birds. Oh no. Well, get rid of the fucking wind turbines then. I genuinely believe that if we really poured our heart and soul into solar, that it could solve 99% of the fucking problem of energy on the planet. We would just have to really commit to it. There would have to be giant solar arrays all over the world.
Yeah, and I'm sure there's other materials that if we really invested in it, that would be more easy to obtain and put together or something.
One would think.
It's like if we could make computers go from like the size of rooms to the size of something that fits in your pocket, I think we could make solar panels made of something that's easier to manufacture and maintain.
We absolutely could.
Yeah.
Solar technology has gone through like a quantum leap just in the last 25 years in terms of like the reliability and efficiency of the photovoltaic cell, and battery efficiency too has gone through leaps and bounds. So, these two technologies married in every human household and habitation would pretty much virtually eliminate the need for a traditional electric structure. You could,
Or like bare bones to like
yeah,
emergencies only or
you could
whatever.
close down a ton of fucking plants.
Yeah.
And, the only real emergency that, you know, I can think of that where it would be really bad to have, uh, you know, a solar array instead of like traditional electricity would be something like nuclear winter or something, which is we'd have other problems.
Yeah.
You know, it would have to be something that blocked the sun out for an extended period of time. And if that happens, power is going to be the least of our problems.
Mm.
So,
Yeah, we have like people have heated driveways. You could just heat the solar panels so they don't get covered with snow.
yeah, Ted Beneke has a heated bathroom.
Yeah.
Heated bathroom tile.
Yeah.
There you go. You could heat your whole fucking home. You could power every gadget in your fucking home. Your car could be an electric car that charges off of the photovoltaics. My dad basically has that set up.
Mm-hmm.
My dad's got a big solar array on top of his house. He's got a fucking electric car that he charges right at his house. He's functionally like off the grid, power wise. It's becoming more and more possible. It just needs to be widely developed. Like I'm looking right now at a big solar array.
Mm-hmm.
The house right across from me, has a pretty nice, pretty new, pretty well-maintained solar system on top that I bet, and it's a big house too. It's like not our size house. Mm-hmm. It's the 2-story model of this. So it's one of the big little McMansions over here. And I would be willing to bet that they don't pay much, if anything at all, for electricity. Maybe in the heat of the peak of the summer.
Yeah.
They need to be supported. But right now, they're running every goddamn thing in their house off of that solar array.
Yeah, and if you added efficiency too, it's like there's a huge cut in power need if you just properly insulate a house.
Yep.
It's really like it's so simple. Like you could literally save like millions of dollars if you just gave everyone double pane windows.
Green energy would never save the energy required for manufacturing. Okay. So keep a few traditional electrical grids active for industrial things and move the entirety of human habitation to solar. Then you don't need something like a big giant bunch of fucking nuclear reactors to run everything. Then it would probably be way less destructive to run one big coal-fired plant that covers the energy needs in your state for manufacturing, or 2 or 3, than it is 20 or 50.
And you could still supplement with solar so that it's less need overall.
Yep, you could still build on top of the big warehouse manufacturer. You could just build a giant solar array that, like Las Vegas, where 35-40% of the power needed is generated by the photovoltaic cells. And the rest of it is supplied by a traditional, and let that be a cost that business incurs. Mm-hmm. Paul, you're making gross assumptions about what? About what? What am I making gross assumptions about? Are you saying that it's impossible? Like, because I know people who are off the grid on solar. I know people who, like my dad gets paid sometimes. Like sometimes his energy bill it just goes to credits. Mm-hmm. So it's possible to get a house completely run by solar. 20, 30 years, it'll probably be even more possible. Paul, tell me how SMR works. Explain it. Huh? Because I don't know some specific technical terminology, the truth isn't the truth anymore. It's so pedantic. Yeah, no, I'm not an energy efficiency expert. I just know the fact that it's possible to run a good-sized human household completely off of solar. And that if it was widely adopted and supplemented with solar farms, that it could probably replace most of our energy needs into the future. especially if we continued to make them more and more efficient.
Mhm.
What about that as a wild assumption?
Like at bare minimum, just covering residential needs would be a huge cut in
It
our
would be
emissions.
huge, yeah.
If that's all we did was only residential and solar, that would be a huge cut.
It means you don't know how advanced nuclear works. You assume it's the same old garbage pressurized water stuff. No, I don't. No, I don't. I assume that the people involved are still as fallible as the people who were involved. See, here's what I think. I think that if Chernobyl was run properly and properly maintained, and the people in it were properly trained, that it probably wouldn't have melted down. I believe the same of 3 Mile Island. I believe that if Fukushima was properly designed and people were properly prepared for the eventuality of a tsunami or an earthquake or both, that the diesel generators that ran that plant could have been placed off the ground, high up enough in the air that they weren't swamped by the tsunami, and that nuclear meltdown that irradiated a chunk of Japan for the next 2,000 years and is still, to my knowledge, spewing fucking toxic waste into the ocean, it wouldn't have happened. So it's not the technology that I don't trust. It's the people running it, the people maintaining it, the corporations maintaining it. I don't trust them to properly maintain it. I don't trust them to properly staff it. I don't trust them to properly plan it and build it. Sorry.
Yeah, it's not like there's this huge wealth of people that understand nuclear technology that can easily staff all these things. It's not like if a dude quits that there's like another nuclear expert with 20 years of expertise ready and willing to.
Yeah. You know, they're not growing nuclear physicists on trees.
Yeah. Nice boy.
Oh, God damn it.
What, oh, you forgot?
I went in there for cigarettes, took my meds, and forgot the cigarettes. No, I didn't. I put them in my pocket.
Yeah.
Life of a stoner. Yeah, I'm not questioning the efficiency or safety of modern nuclear reactors. I'm questioning the ability of people to maintain them properly and build them properly and foresee the eventuality that would cause a meltdown or an explosion or a hack. Yeah. There's no such thing as a zero maintenance anything. And, you know, it's one thing to risk people's lives with something like a car that's poorly maintained, and another thing to risk the lives of an entire population and the usability by human beings or other animals of a piece of land for thousands of years. Sorry. something about a rocket with nuclear propulsion being capable of reaching Mars in 42 days. Yeah, but that may be true, but you can't put a person on that. That would liquefy a person. The G forces from that would probably be insane.
I don't know. Maybe I'm just too pessimistic, but I've just lost all hope of humanity even getting that far.
I mean, you're probably not wrong. It's not looking good for us. You know, our trajectory is not great. A lot of the hope and wonder of our species has been extinguished. Comparing an SMR to the reactors you were talking about is like comparing the Wright Flyer to an F-16. Yeah, but both of them can crash into the ground. You got to admit that in your little, yeah, they're both flying machines that could crash if something goes wrong. Need to come up with a better analogy, but you know what the problem is? One doesn't exist. Because a maintenance-free piece of technology that is absolutely perfectly running in perpetuity does not exist.
And can't change the passage of time to degrade things.
No. But even if you want to, that analogy doesn't hold water. They're both flying machines prone to mechanical failure if not properly piloted and maintained. So is a nuclear reactor. Paul, yes, you can. No, you can't. What? Name one thing. Name one piece of technology on Earth that runs in perpetuity with no maintenance. I'll wait. There isn't one.
There's technology that can last a long time,
sure.
But that means that you're not using it all the time.
Even if there was some component, it would be dependent upon technology that needs maintenance in order to run. There's no such thing, bro. There's no such thing as a perpetually maintenance-free machine. An SMR will run 60 years. What happens after 60 years? Got to get rid of some nuclear material, I'm assuming. Where are you going to put it? I think the risk is worth it. Well, there you go. Now I can at least respect that position. You're at least allotting for, yes, I know that there might be horrible disasters in perpetuity with this type of energy, but I'm willing to accept that risk. I think that risk is acceptable versus the other possible outcomes. Fine. I don't.
It's like we're forgetting the people that actually live in these areas that are near these reactors. Like they don't get a voice.
Yep. After 60 years, nothing. You seal it and it just sits there. Oh, that sounds great. So you've just got a piece of nuclear just a radioactive core sitting there. What if they don't guard it well? What if it falls into the hands of an organization that takes it and uses it to distribute dirty nuclear material all over the place? What contingency plan could you possibly envision being put into place that makes that an impossibility? None.
Yeah, it's like with the Ukraine war, the biggest fucking reactor they have in Ukraine was in the control of Russia.
It's the biggest in the world.
Yeah.
The largest nuclear reactor in the world was the site of a war with bullets and rockets being fired back and forth at it and within it. So not only have you solved nuclear problems, but you've solved war, terrorism, human stupidity, human ignorance. You've just solved it all. We've reached the apex of humanity. We can build the perfect eternal machine. No. And when that machine, when it malfunctions, blows up and spews nuke all over everything, you really got to have the conversation with yourself like, should we do this? The reactants are burned as they're created by it by way of function, does not create weapons material, nor will it melt into the ground. Then why do you need to put a sarcophagus around it and seal it away?
And just because it can't be turned into a nuke doesn't mean that that material can't still hurt people.
Right. See, this is like you have no accounting for just the basic possibility that this technology could be imperfect and fail. You have some sort of standing belief that scientists have defeated mechanical failure and defeated the human capacity for ignorance, and they just haven't. It literally says U-233 is a potential weapons grade material on Wiki. Uh-oh. Oops. It's uranium, bro. Of course it could be weaponized.
Well, like what's been going on recently right now is like domestic terrorists attacking power plants, like the electrical ones where they don't blow up, but like that's happening right now in this country, people targeting power plants.
Of course. All I can say is you need to watch engineers speak on it. See, that's the thing, is you assume that I haven't. Like, I'm no nuclear expert, but I've watched engineers talk about nuclear reactors and shit. None of them really tackle what I'm talking about here, which is the human element. The fact that humans don't have infinite foresight, the fact that humans often don't plan for eventualities, and the fact that, relatively way more often than it should, ends in a meltdown.
We're also not in a communist utopia.
No.
Cost-cutting measures are inevitable in this society.
Yep. Maybe in a perfect fucking world, you would be correct. There would be such a slim margin of failure in these things just because of the importance that society placed on its maintenance, that they would be useful. Maybe it would be a trait, but we're not living in that world. We're living in a world where war happens. Like I said, tell me how you account for the largest nuclear reactor in the world being a war zone right now. I'll wait. Sell me that one as a long-term solution for humans' fucking power needs. Come on.
Yeah, and they can't just like, when they took it over, they couldn't just turn it off. They like kept these workers hostage to make sure that it kept
right.
It wouldn't melt down or whatever.
The largest reactor is in Japan. Well, that's not my understanding, but even if that's so, I guess it's lucky that they're in such a stable, politically stable region as Asia.
Yeah, like they didn't just have some nukes fly over from North Korea.
Yeah, no, there's nothing going on in Asia that would make a giant nuclear reactor in the middle of a fucking populated area a liability for people.
No.
Nothing at all. Just so stable there. So safe. Where's my 30-page peer-reviewed essay on this topic? I'm working on it, bro. I'm working on my double doctorate in nuclear physics and human engineering. So, I'll read it to you guys when it's done.
I mean, like, isn't democracy a liberal value? It's like, after 3 Mile Island, it was the people that said no more.
Yeah. And for good reason. Because their entire community was threatened. Their livelihoods. It's very easy to blithely just go like, oh yeah, it runs for 60 years and you just seal it up. It's just like, in perpetuity. What happens when we start getting big stockpiles of this shit? 60 years is a long time for a single human being. Not that long in terms of, like, human existence. Human beings as we are have existed for something like, what, 350,000 years or something like that? 60 years a blip. Pretty soon you got big, giant fucking, stockpiles of this crap.
Yeah, the Cold War was only 30 years ago.
Yeah, and it's back again.
Yeah.
We're back in the Cold War again. It's just one of those things, man. Like we're not gonna see it the same way. I trust science and scientists to a point, but I don't trust them to eliminate human ignorance and human failure and human lack of foresight. That's just, that's like saying that everything that we have now, because scientists are really smart and well studied, is as good as it's going to get. And we see that that's not the case. Science is constantly, reinventing ways of doing things because the way that we're doing it now is, dangerous or inefficient or both. So this idea that nuclear reactors have entered this failure-proof age is just naive, and I think it's like willing naivete.
People forget bias too. It's like, I imagine someone that dedicated their whole life to learning about nuclear would probably want nuclear to still be a thing.
I mean, yeah. Would probably talk about it in glowing terms. Somebody whose entire career and life's work depends upon it, yeah. Of course they're gonna say it's fucking super safe, and they have every reason to. My understanding is correct. The proposed SMR uses U-233, which is made from thorium-232, and its decay chain ends with lead. So after 60 years used, have a lead. See, that's not my understanding. My understanding is that the nuclear material used in these modern reactors will still have to be disposed of when it reaches the end of its life. It's not just an inert material at the end.
Yeah, they have a whole department that's dedicated to how to dispose of this.
Yeah. It's just one of those conversations that's not going to go anywhere.
No.
Like, I'm not going to be convinced in an internet conversation that human beings are now infallible. Paul, you need to tie a solar panel around your waist. Let us tether you around the earth, soaking up as much power as possible. Okay, I'll do that for you guys. I'll be the new moon. But that is a possibility, dude. Think about if we were to really invest in the efficiency of rocketry and stuff, and we could make these routine kind of industrial trips back and forth to the moon, you could just cover the fucking moon in solar.
Yeah.
And have it just charge a fucking litany of batteries and bring them back. I don't know, that if you covered the whole visible face of the moon with solar, it might make a laser or something that reflects sunlight onto us and kills us all.
Might make the moon too heavy too.
Who knows? That's a good point. You don't want to throw that ratio off too much. Probably take more energy to send the empty battery. Well, now, yeah. But, you work on the efficiency a little bit. I mean, apparently the moon has a ton of water deposits too, so we could harvest tons of H2O. Hey, look at that. Technically speaking, the end result is inert, but that can take millions of years. My guess is they remove it when it's, yeah, right. They're not using it. It's not like staying an active reactor until it's entirely lead. At a certain point, its power output starts to fall below the threshold and they have to replace it. And that means they have to build a little fucking sarcophagus around it and move the fucking reactor somewhere. And then, you go a couple thousand years into the future and you've got these huge stockpiles of intensely radioactive material that are just targets for terrorism, targets for human failing, targets for fuck ups. It's just like nobody can get rid. There's no argument to be made, in my opinion. Especially when we have other options, which clearly we do. And megawatt per hour solar is cheaper than nuclear anyway, and the tech constantly improving. I don't get the hype. I don't either.
You can also do this crazy thing called using less energy. Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah. What is it? What is it, baby boy? Are you cold? Me too. I'm cold. I'm ready to go inside. You ready to go inside? Let's go inside. I'm done. I'm out of here. See you guys later. Bye.